Hello and welcome back to the Cupcake Gemma channel with me, Gemma. I'm here in the studio with Dane and Nikki and I'm about to make one of my favourite breads. This is called Shokupan, also known as Hokkaido bread or Japanese milk bread, or if you're a fan of Sarah and Duck, you will know that John likes to call this cloud bread. How do you make it? Well, it's similar to challah bread, so if you've ever had that, it's very light, very soft, beautiful white bread, really great for making yummy sandwiches. And it gets so soft because it's made using a Tangzhong, which is a kind of flour and liquid paste which you cook, and what that does is it helps gelatinize the starches in the flour to help them absorb more liquid, which results in a softer loaf, and also it helps to extend the shelf life of your bread. So I'm going to start by making the Tangzhong because that needs to cool down to room temperature to start with. So I've got a pan here. I'm going to start by putting my water in. So I've got 60 millilitres or 60 grams of water and 25 grams of flour. Now I'm using all the way through, I'm using strong white bread flour, so make sure you find that. So I've got 25 grams of that, and I'm going to whisk that together until all the lumps have gone. And when that's smooth, you can then add 60 grams of whole milk and give that a good stir as well. And then once that's smooth, you can turn on the heat. You want to set it to a medium heat and then stir with the whisk continuously. Now, this can take anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes. It'll go from quite a loose liquid to a really thick pudding-like consistency. Right, that's looking really sort of stringy and gelatinous and paste-like, as you can see. So now we need to just pop this into a container because it needs to cool to room temperature, really. Definitely don't put it in the fridge, but just leave it to cool. And I'm going to put cling film over the top, making contact with the surface because this will form a little skin and we don't want that. So grab some cling film and just gently pop it over the top. It will be hot, so mind your fingers. And just squash it down onto the surface and then just leave that to cool. Right, it's time to make the dough. My Tangzhong is kind of fairly warm, it's like room temperature. And I've also warmed up a little bit of milk. Now I did 120 grams of milk, but I added 1 tablespoon of the total amount of sugar. So in total we've got 50 grams of sugar going into the dough, but I just removed 1 tablespoon. Stirred that into the milk and just heated that till it was lukewarm. That's somewhere between like 25, 30 degrees. So you can put your finger in it. And I'm going to go ahead and pour that into the bowl of my stand mixer, which is fitted with a dough hook because we're making dough, so it seems like the sensible thing to do. And then I have my yeast, and I'm using Active Yeast. This is a 7-gram sachet, and it is active, but I like to activate it further. That's why I'm using the warm milk. So I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top and then give it a little stir. Now I'm going to leave that for 5 or 10 minutes and come back to it when it's really like frothy on the top, which gives me a good chance to talk to you about tins. So obviously to make this into a loaf, well not obviously, maybe it isn't obvious, you're gonna need a loaf pan. There's a couple that you can use. So I'm using, this one's actually like a 450 gram one. This is probably about 550, so ever so slightly bigger. And you'll notice that this one here has a lid, which is what we're going to be using. If you don't have one with a lid, you can cheat by using one without a lid, and then you can put a baking sheet on top with something like weighted down, something oven-proof obviously, like a ceramic dish or something like that, and you'll get the same kind of effect. But this one's really handy. This is called a Pullman loaf tin. Various companies make various different kinds, and this one is really nice because it's got these like stripy marks which kind of come out on the side of the loaf, which I really like. But if you don't want to do the lidded one, you can just use an open tin, and with that you'll end up with the really nice like puffy, flumpy bread, but you'll want to give it an egg wash, and I'll tell you about how to do that when the time comes. Depending on what kind of tin it is, you might want to just grease them really lightly with a little bit of butter, but to be honest, there's so much butter going into this dough, I think they'll come out just fine. Right, we've reached peak froth in the bowl here. So we're gonna get on with making the dough. So I'm gonna start by adding the remaining sugar. So remember in total we had 50 grams, but I removed a tablespoon. So just pop that in. And the next ingredient is milk powder. Now this is just going to make it even sort of softer, believe it or not, and milkier in flavour. You can use regular milk powder. I like to toast mine, so all you need to do to get it to this lovely colour is just to either bake it in an oven, in a low oven, say like around 140, 150 in a tray, but stir it like every 10 or 15 minutes. It's a little bit like you're making caramelized white chocolate because it's a similar process. And it just makes a really nice sort of toastier flavor. So I've got 15 grams of that. Then follow that with your room temperature Tangzhong, 1 egg. I've also got 350 grams of strong white bread flour, and then 1 teaspoon of sea salt. So start the mixer slowly to bring all the ingredients together. It'll start by looking really shaggy, and then it will all come together into sort of one solid mass, and then you need to mix it on that slow speed for 5 minutes. Right, this has been going for 5 minutes now, and it's time to have the butter added. Now the butter is going to give it its really unique flavour, but also it's going to make the dough super soft, like the bread, super soft, but a little bit like brioche and challah, as mentioned before. So my butter, and I've got 60 grams here, spreadably soft. This is the kind of butter that you would spread on a loaf of white bread without tearing it. So that's nice and soft. And I'm going to add it in little bits, giving it a really good mix in between each bit. And then when all of your butter is in, you can turn up the speed to kind of medium. I mean, it's not really high, otherwise your mix is in danger of falling off the table. And you're gonna set your timer for 5-7 minutes. What you're looking for is for the dough to be coming away from the sides of the bowls cleanly. And then there's one last test to perform on your dough to make sure it's ready, and that's the window pane test. So this is where you grab a little piece of dough and then just stretch it really gently between your fingers, and it should be translucent but still attached to itself, so not tearing. That's passing the window pane test. So I'm gonna take all my dough off the dough hook. Oh, golly, hang on. Oh, there we go. And then I'm gonna just pop that onto very, very lightly floured worktop, because we don't want to add too much more flour. And then I'm just going to shape this really briefly. So just get it into a sort of rough ball. And then I like to use, well, at home I actually have a proper dough scraper. I don't have it here, but I'm using a cake scraper. This is, you know, you use what you can. I like to shape my dough into a ball just by kind of scooping it round and tucking it in. And what you'll end up with is a nice sort of tight, satiny top. Obviously it needs to proof. So I'm gonna put this into a big bowl, because obviously it needs to grow in size. And I'm going to cover it lightly with cling film, like not a complete sort of tight cover. And then just leave that somewhere ambient, warm. It's up to you. So if you're in a hurry, you could speed this process up by boiling water in a tray into your oven with the oven off and putting your dough in there. And that will mean that the proof takes around 45-50 minutes, so really quick. Room temperature, it'll probably take anywhere between an hour and 2. If you're feeling lazy and you just want to like go at a leisurely pace, you can do this overnight in the fridge. A really slow bulk ferment, it's called. So whichever way works for you, put your dough there. Okay, so my dough doubled in size. It looks a bit funny at the moment because I actually did do it overnight in the fridge, and I took it out of the bowl and it's kind of deflated a little bit, but that's good because you want to knock your dough back a little bit. You can just sort of squash it or punch it in the bowl, whichever works for you. But to start with, I'm going to divide it into 3 equal pieces. So I've weighed my dough. And my 3 pieces will each be 248 grams each. So I have my scales here, and let's see how we get on. Right, so I'm going to fashion these into little balls to start with, just to make them a bit easier to work with. And then I'm going to roll them out into nice rectangles. They need to be 28 to 30 centimetres by about 12 centimetres. And just make sure your worktop and your rolling pin is lightly dusted with flour. Now, if you're using fridge cold dough like me, it will be much easier to handle. It won't be quite as sticky as if you've proved it at a warmer temperature, so just bear that in mind. So once you've rolled out your rectangle and it's nice and neat, you can trim off any wibbly wobbly edges if you want, then you need to fold it. So start by folding one long side into the middle and then fold the other side onto the top of that so that you have a long strip. Now if you want to, you can give this another light roll just to flatten it out a bit. Next you need to roll it all up into a tight scroll. And then when you get to the end, give the edge just a little pinch down into the body of the roll just to stick it down a bit. And then pop that into your tin at one end with the spirals facing outwards towards the long sides of the tin. And then repeat with your other pieces of dough. Right, now it needs its second proof, so I'm just going to use the same bit of cling film because, you know, reuse, recycle, just to lightly cover that. And then pop that back into a warmish spot. So with the second proof, I don't recommend doing that slowly in the fridge like you did the first proof because you can end up with really dry bread at the end of that. But I'm going to put mine into just a warm space. It can take anywhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours, depending on how warm your space is. These are perfectly proofed. You can tell by giving it a little prod and the dough should spring back, quite slowly sometimes. What shouldn't happen is that you just have a big finger hole in there forever. That means it's overproofed, which you can still go ahead and bake it, but the texture will be very different and not quite right. You'll have lots of open holes. But I'm hoping this is good. So I'm gonna pop my lid on. Now remember, if you don't have a lid, you can use a baking tray. Just weight it down with something heavy and bake-proof, like a ceramic dish. And if you don't want to use a lid and you want to have the more open, round top, then you can just go ahead and do an egg wash. So the way to make an egg wash is 1 egg and 1 or 2 tablespoons of water. Just whisk that together to make a thin wash, and then just brush that over really gently before you put it in the oven. But I have my little box and it's going in the oven. And I've got my oven preheated to 165 degrees C, and I'm going to bake it for between 30 and 35 minutes. So it's difficult to tell when the bread is ready because obviously it's in a tin, so I recommend you get a probe thermometer. Your bread will be ready when the inside of the bread is 85 to 90 degrees C. My bread is out of the oven, and it's really important when your bread's ready and out of the oven, you need to get it out of the tin straight away to cool. And as you can see, I baked 2 loaves. I did one in the lidded tin and one without the lidded tin with a little glaze on. And they both smell amazing. And I'm gonna have to just tear this open because it's very, very satisfying. Have a look at this. Whoa. Look at that. Now it is a little bit darker than a lot of milk bread, and that's because we've used the toasted milk powder here. I can't resist, it's still a little bit warm inside, and it is so delicious. Oh, it's just really, really good. It's like the best white bread that you could, like the best sort of square sandwich bread that you could ever dream of. It's so nice, and it's a little bit sweet and quite rich with the butter, but not too rich. So you can definitely get away with making like an egg mayo sandwich with this, or what a lot of people in Japan do is make the fruit sandos, which are really popular, or you could do what I'm going to do, and that is make honey butter toast. Now, if you are a fan of our bakery tour videos, you would have probably seen me go on about the Arome Bakery's honey butter toast a few times, and I'm gonna make it. So I'm going to put that video up tomorrow. So make sure you check out the video tomorrow. I'll put it up tomorrow evening. So if you want that recipe, head over there or here. I guess you're here already. Just come back tomorrow. Please let me know if you bake this by going to the Bake Club on Patreon if you're a member there. And if you're not, please go ahead and check that out because maybe it's for you. We love you here. Also, you can take pics, use a hashtag CupcakeGemma and pop that on Instagram and we'll see. Or you can let us know if you bake this and let us know how you got on in the comments below. And don't forget, if you like this video, please give it the thumbs up down there and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Why not? I'm going to get ready to make honey butter toast, so I will hopefully see some of you tomorrow. Ta-ta for now. I'm trying not to eat this bread before I make the honey butter toast. Nom, 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 nom.